All right, so here we are. I guess the first point on the agenda might be, let's reassess. We're at the reassess point for whether or not we're recording videos of these meetings.
Oh.
Because we said we would do it in the new semester, and this is the first time we were doing that. Oops, I'm getting an echo as my, there we go. So, thoughts, pros, cons.
For the
management meetings recordings.
Yes, we're
recording. Oh, okay.
So yeah, we're recording. Sorry, I have the notes, which I'll like send the slide link to, or just the link to the, I think it's the SharePoint thing. Although the last few meetings they've ended up like fairly minimal, enough that it's like 1 or 2 bullet points and not even really any action items because it's one thing to read. But
He's gone.
Yeah, it's muted. I don't know. Might have accidentally.
No, sorry, I am still here. I'm just trying to find out. Try and figure out how to actually send the Word file over. But either way, it's in the Teams channel. But
so I think part of what the hope was that by taking the time that we did, we would all be able to evaluate whether or not the presence or potential lack of a video would hinder our workflows. And so I guess the question we're asking ourselves is, from a personal standpoint, have you found that the videos either have added something to your workflow that you would like to continue to have, or have you not looked at them, in which case they haven't diminished any things? And I think that's unfortunately going to be a very personal bit. So I will say that if anyone has any strong feelings that they would like to share but don't want to have recorded, they could talk to me offline, which is an interesting. Yes, okay. So where are people at?
I might have used the videos once. I don't have a great memory for that, for like a time period. I know I've used these videos a couple times, but you know, I think I could also have asked. So maybe that's, you know, if that's not a problem, then that's an alternative.
Yeah, or if the notes that Bryce has been keeping would have been sufficient to serve that purpose as well, I guess is the other question.
Yes, maybe I didn't have the link at the time. Don't know.
I don't think I've used the management. I've used other videos, but I haven't used management videos. And I think that I'm so grateful for Bryce doing the notes, because even if I do notes, I don't know where they are, all that kind of stuff. But I think the notes are invaluable, especially because this thing about making decisions and then revisiting the decisions. You know, when we were one of the examples was the thing about when we were looking at the US website accessibility recommendations. You know, I think that's really helpful to have looked at it, discussed it, made decisions about it, and then we can go back and look at what decisions we made and why we made those decisions. I think those are really helpful.
So it sounds to me, and I don't want to mischaracterize anyone's opinion, but it sounds to me like the balance point seems to be that if we keep taking notes and recognize that people can ask questions when their notes are insufficient, that the overhead of the video probably doesn't warrant, the cost benefit is such that we can get rid of the videoing of these meetings and still you know, come out on top. Does that sound fair? That I don't know. Should we put it to a vote? What is that? I mean, I don't actually. I think this is a situation where someone could veto, so I'm not sure a vote is appropriately the right spot. But
we should use the 5-finger feedback format.
What's the 5-finger feedback format?
Yeah, what is
I'll
that?
tell you, if you want, we can discuss it, but maybe this isn't the time. But
it sounds like a learning
but
curve.
it's got a little bit of, it's called fist to five, but
Okay, so it's sort of
um,
like a Likert scale, but with your hand. Strongly
uh,
agree, strongly disagree, sort of thing.
right, but it requires that people who give their feedback have skin in the game. There's
I
like
see.
specific ways to answer the
Yeah, it's
the
roughly-
answers mean.
Yeah, Michelle has taught me this at some point. I don't remember the exact ones, but it's roughly like you're either you're in it and you're going to do it, or like you're not in it, or you're okay with it but you like can't do it yourself or whatever.
It doesn't matter anyway.
This is less for I think.
So what I'm gonna
the doing it
what-
is not doing a thing anymore. So
Yeah, if it were me, I would keep them, but I'm also very attached to my digital data. So, and like I'm okay if we take them off and then until we hit a problem. So,
all right. Well, then let's then.
Maybe, yeah,
Well,
maybe.
so I just don't want us to end up in the same place we were 3 months ago, which was that let's just keep doing it to see, because the thing idea is that we've done to see. And so I want to make sure, I want us to
Do
sort
you
of,
think it would make sense if we know we're discussing a topic and we want to remember the discussion, that we could just turn the recording on for that particular discussion, and then in the notes we could link to it? Does that make sense or no?
I suppose that makes sense, but there's an overhead. I think the place we were at the beginning of this conversation was there's an overhead involved with the videos.
Right.
And I think there is a very seductive feeling that comes with the videos, that because we videoed it, we somehow have captured it in an actionable way.
Mhm.
And I worry that often when we video something, we either don't capture it in a actionable way, or that the videoing might, in some circumstances, cut against the benefits that come with a more thoughtful, less filtered conversation. Now, maybe other people aren't thinking about the fact that every
Oh, I
time we
see.
record this, we're making it public to the world, and that there are implications that
Yeah.
come with that. But
Sure.
that is something that is always at the top of my mind.
I gotcha.
And that produces a certain cognitive load and a certain administrative burden. And if
I
the
see.
value on the other side is that we just want to have records of
Right.
our thinking, there are other ways that we can maintain those records that don't have those same associated risks or burdens, or I think like appearance of keeping data when not really keeping it in a meaningful way.
Right. That makes a lot of sense, and that sort of goes towards why the grant partners meetings aren't recorded.
Yes.
And occasionally we come up with solutions in grant partners that I really wish were recorded.
Well, yes, but the balance there, the conversation, and you may not have been here for all of the variation of those conversations. I could point you to the video, but I can also just summarize,
Yeah.
which is that in the grant partners, we felt that a lot of the things that would be useful are things that already should be part of our documentation.
I see.
And
Yeah.
that documentation has a special position in that it's you want it to be easily editable and searchable and content findable, which is
Right.
not necessarily the case when there's like a little discussion of a nugget of something inside an hour-long video.
Yeah.
Now, of course, then you can say, oh, but we could index the video. It's like, yes, you could do all
There's
those
your
things,
overhead.
but that's someone's work.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you're already going to be creating documentation, text documentation is great for the big thing, be able to find, move around, jump around. Maybe occasionally you want to have videos of things,
Mhm.
but they should be targeted videos as opposed to like the
Sure.
stream
Yeah.
of consciousness
Yeah.
of a meeting.
I see.
And that was sort of where we came down with that, which is why we felt that it was responsible to not be recording those, because the freedom.
Plus,
they
you get a
provided to
lot more.
conversation.
I mean, if it's safer for people, you get
Yeah.
a lot more. Yeah.
All right. So in that case, what I'm going to do is tentatively, barring any direct communications from folks, I think that we'll stop recording the management meetings with the continuation of the abbreviated minutes, and we'll continue to assess on an ongoing basis how that's working for folks. But this will.
And
remove-
recorded thank you to Bryce for doing these notes.
Yes,
That's a big.
yes. Very, very
Absolutely, yes. Thanks, Bryce.
big thank you.
Sorry, the only thing I was going to add that I think that like notes, at least when I'll admit, if y'all like going through and looking at some of the notes, I was one of those things that I definitely like did a lot better at the beginning and then slowly crept down. And like I said, I don't remember how much of that is just because we talked about less at admin meetings, and there were like some of them were 5-minute meetings versus
Yeah.
how much I just sort of made the notes sparser. But I do think the biggest thing is less, or like the biggest thing to making these meetings more useful is less about how we record them and more about like takeaways and like action items and making sure we follow through on that sort of stuff. And the notes I do feel like helps with that a bit more than like, oh, what were the action items of this meeting? I have to go through and watch the whole meeting and then try and suss out where, if we didn't exactly say like, okay, this is a thing we're all going to do next week, I have to like suss out and get that. Whereas if we're taking notes, it's like, oh, I have to write this down. What's the exact takeaway from this conversation? Sort of thing is my only take, is that it mostly is how we run the meeting and not how we record it. So
I think the notes we also maybe want to, we've talked about this before, of doing a slight culture shift so that if there are things that people want to have on the agenda, we can proactively put them on the meeting notes so that then we just go through, what people have. Now, whether or not people remember to do that, we don't want to add any burden to anyone. The thing is, and I think that it's entirely responsible that you started off with verbose notes and then diminished the notes, because that's in response to how people were using and engaging with the notes. So if we get to the point where it's like, why isn't this in the notes? Then that's a signal that the notes need to be more verbose. But I think it's a natural and appropriate phenomenon for the notes to get, sparse to the point of, the burden of producing them is you want to, it's all a balancing act. So
It may be worth just noting that the meeting was, there were no items, and then we know that notes were taken,
Yes. So if we just had sort of a simple agenda of like, these were the issues that were talked about, because we do tend to frame things in issues. Even just a list of those is, say relatively sparse, but super useful. Okay. Well, that being said, I guess we can continue recording for this. No, we're just going to stop. We're going to stop the recording. Goodbye.